Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm glad that Dr. Jahanian mentioned Blue Waters there. We were just there not that long ago, but since you covered that, I can move on to a different area. Dr. McQueeney, in your testimony, you talk about how the federal government needs to invest in big data if the U.S. is going to maintain its leadership and competitive edge in this area. The needs and potential benefits of big data for the federal government align closely with those of private industry in a number of areas. If that is the case, how can the federal government more effectively partner with industry to achieve common goals? And do you believe that industry has sufficient input in the federal government's research agenda as it relates to big data?
Yeah, I do think we have sufficient input. I think we have excellent dialogues with the relevant agencies and national laboratories. And I think the roles are complementary. I go back to the story about the early days of the ASCII program, where through a collaboration we realized that the key piece of a supercomputing system that needed to be accelerated was not the entire investment. We could ride on the commercial investments for most of the components of the supercomputing systems at that time, except for one, which was the high bandwidth switching between processors. And so that kind of thoughtful connection between the leaders in commercial computing and the leaders on the government side has been able historically to identify which areas are critical to attain government mission imperatives, and where we can leverage commercial technology and where we need to accelerate that in a surgical fashion. So it's, in our view, been a very good partnership based on very high bandwidth technical communications, understanding of applications, and knowing when the government should be leveraging commercial investments and when they need to accelerate parts of that investment to attain unique mission goals. And again, as I've said before, once those barriers are crossed in terms of either the scalability of the system or the internal bandwidth of the system, it opens up thousands of new applications where there were ready problems to be analyzed, but those applications weren't large enough to drive that breakthrough. So that's how the effect works of the leadership coming from some of the government agencies and then being realized broadly across industry. That's the essence of where this leadership has come from so successfully over the years.
I want to follow up with Dr. Rappa on that. I mean, Dr. Rappa, you discussed the importance of public-private partnerships to realizing the benefits of big data and stated specifically that we must intensify and accelerate the national investment in proven models. What characteristics make a public-private partnership successful, and what models should we be investing in? What were we referring to there?
Well, I think, first of all, we've been doing this now for 6 years, and so I think we do have a fairly interesting, novel model for producing talent in this field with a kind of proven track record based on data, based on market value of the graduates. But I think it comes really, partly from the university community, partly from the academic community. Obviously, we have a set of missions to educate students, but we need to also, I think, do that by trying to really understand the employer. What are they looking for when they hire talent? What are the kinds of skills, balanced skills, that they need in order to be effective on the job? And I think employers need to sort of be open to working with the academic community. There's a certain amount of dissonance that naturally occurs because they are two different worlds with different missions. But I think it's really, I think we've shown that it's possible with organizational innovation, with a focused effort, with a sense of openness to engage the private sector in a very positive way, not just at NC State, but at other universities. There are many, many examples now that I hope we're providing some leadership on, but that other universities are both working with our model, but also pursuing other creative models to do this. There are probably about 24 around the country already.
Thank you. Dr. Jahanian, anything you want to add about public-private partnerships?
Yes, indeed. There's no question that when we think about the innovation ecosystem in this country, it includes academia, it includes the private sector, it includes government investment, and a talent-rich workforce. The private sector is investing heavily in cloud computing, as you know. It's investing heavily in making computational resources also available. I think there are opportunities for the federal investment to leverage that and make some of that available, of course, that's commercially available today to our researchers, to our scientists and engineers who could rely on those systems. We have announced a number of partnerships, one with IBM and Google, another one with Microsoft that makes some of those resources available to the research community. Dr. McQueeney already mentioned this, that there's high bandwidth communication between the private sector and various federal agencies. I can tell you from NSF's perspective, it's very, very rich collaboration. On my advisory committee, I have a number of senior leadership from private sector who serve on my advisory committee advising us on our portfolio, on our investments, in addition to academics who serve on my advisory committee. The final comment that I want to make is there are a number of programs at NSF, and I know you're familiar with all of them, including SBIR, including ICOR, and so on, that focus on transfer of knowledge from lab to practice. Federal government invests heavily in advancing frontiers of knowledge. For us to accelerate that, programs such as ICOR, SBIR, and so on serve a tremendous purpose. And here again, there are opportunities to engage the private sector and accelerate the transfer of knowledge to practice to benefit the nation. Thank you.
Thank you.